My moments of athletic glory are very few and so far between. My favorite happened about 15 years ago. I was playing City League basketball with some friends, and we were the worst team in the league in every category except sportsmanship. Our post-game high fives were enthusiastic and heartfelt out of amazement at the skill of the people who had inevitably just beaten us soundly. It was an honor to be on the court with them. Eventually, the season ended and the tournament came around. We had won, 2 or 3 games, the worst record in the league. So we were matched up with the best team to tune up. Our unspoken assignment was to help the best team tune up for the rest of the tournament. Well, we decided it would at least be a character-building exercise. Maybe we could learn something from these guys that we could use for next year. You see what I mean about sportsmanship. When the day of the game rolled around, we were ready to play. The other team's star player was a guy who was about 6'10". I am not exaggerating. He played at a big college out east someplace, and he guarded me. Now, to everyone's surprise, we kept things respectable. In fact, with a minute to go, somehow we were only down by 7 points. But we didn't have much time. We knew we were going to have to shoot 3-pointers. So as soon as we had the ball, I ran down the court, set up behind the 3-point line. The big guy didn't guard me out there. He was lazy and he didn't think he had to. So in desperation, with a worried look on his face, our point guard passed me the ball, the only open player. I took a shot and swish, it went through. 3 points. Thank you very much. I'm reliving it all now. Down by 4. We were down by 4. We ran back down the court where quickly the other team missed a pass, went out of bounds, so we got the ball again. And I set up in the same place outside the 3-point line. And the point guard passed it to me again against his better judgment. And again, the big lazy guy just watched me. I could see him thinking, he can't hit that shot twice. But I put it up again, and I hit it again. I wish you all had been there. We were down by 1 point. We were a team from the church that I was serving, and it became clear to all of us at this point that God was on our side. Down by 1, 30 seconds to go. The 15 or 20 family members gathered to watch us were clapping and shouting, and success did not look good on me. I did that thing that good players do. I slapped the floor, and I looked at the big guy, and I said, "Let's go." That was his reaction, too. It seemed so clear to me in that moment what would happen next. Surely I would hit one more shot, the crowd would rush the floor, I would be the hero. That moment was so full of potential. Every good possibility was out in front of our team. But as Paul Harvey used to say, here's the rest of the story. The other team got the ball, and they ran down the court, and with 15 seconds to go, they missed a shot. Our point guard got the rebound and ran the ball down the court. I set up in that very same spot from which I had just hit 2 straight 3-pointers, and once again, the lazy big guy wasn't guarding me. And once again, the point guard passed the ball to me, and I caught it, and I jumped to shoot, and suddenly, all I could see were that big guy's arms and legs and his face coming right at me. He had decided to guard me, and he covered so much ground so quickly that I came back down with the ball, knowing that if I tried to shoot it, he would make it my dinner. Traveling was called, and that was it. The horn sounded, the game was over, and my team went and did what we did best. We told the people who had just beaten us that they played a good game. Sometimes the story just doesn't go the way we first imagined it would. I think Jesus' disciples were in that floor-slapping moment of arrogance in the weeks before his death. Things had been going so well. Jesus' teaching was creating a small counter-empire, pro-love movement. They were cheered by crowds, as the Gospels tell us, when they rode into Jerusalem. It seemed things were just about as good as they could be, but it spiraled out of control, and so quickly. The Romans were alarmed by Jesus' rabble-rousing. They ran him through a sham trial and sentenced him to death, and suddenly Jesus was gone, a victim of the empire he sought to critique. His followers were huddled together around town, hiding for fear of their own executions. What exactly were they supposed to do now? What they eventually did changed everything. They looked death and empire in the eye and created a story of resurrection. I personally don't believe Jesus ever stood up and walked out of a grave. Some do. But either way, the disciples found a way to preserve the movement that they and Jesus had founded by reinterpreting the end of his story. Folks who followed Jesus had been transformed by his teaching, by his revolutionary acts of kindness and inclusion. He was a boundary breaker. He didn't care what your background was. He believed people were called first and foremost to care for one another. He was, in some ways, a Jewish humanist. But then he was publicly executed. These people who followed him were so deeply transformed by their experience of Jesus, they knew it must go beyond his death. The gospel authors intended to tell their readers that not even death could overcome the impact of the message. Rome could not conquer Jesus' message of love and hope, even using the horrific public torture of crucifixion. There was life after death, even if that life didn't look like they thought it would. Paul would later reflect on this and ask, "Grave, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting?" The Jesus resurrection story is clearly patterned on, or similar to at least, older resurrection stories. Here's one, in the words of my colleague Victoria Weinstein. After a most shocking and frightful year when Demeter's wrath kept the earth from yielding a single seed, and the race of humans was about to die altogether from hunger, the gods relented to Demeter's rage and justice seeking, and Persephone was released from the land of the dead. Mother and daughter clasped each other close in passionate reunion. But because she had eaten of the pomegranate, fruit of the underworld, Persephone was committed to returning to Hades for a portion of the year, free to spend 1/3 of the year in the sunlit world. She became the most dread and beloved queen of the underworld, gracious on her throne, greeter of departed souls, absolute sovereign of her new realm. Greek religion confirms her status as even higher than her abductor turned husband, the Lord Hades. In all reports of the Eleusinian mysteries, we read of a torchlight search for Persephone. Demeter goes in search of her daughter and joyfully proclaims, "She is risen." So here, clearly, is a story written after a terrible famine, or in response to that idea, to reassure people that the earth's bounty would return, that every year the cycles would be as they were the year before. Whether you believe them literally or see them more as fables, these are not once-upon-a-time stories. They're stories about us. We have the power to recast our stories by allowing our lives to teach us instead of trying to fit them in boxes that do not fit, by looking for clues in our lives as to which story we should be telling. We have resurrection power. Here's the true meaning of all of humanity's resurrection stories as told by the late Christian scholar Marcus Borg. In the Gospels, death and resurrection, dying and rising, are again and again a metaphor for personal transformation. It means dying to an old way of being and being born into a new way of being. Dying to an old identity and being born into a new identity. I might say it this way. Sometimes the arc of our life story seems to be moving in one direction, and then, suddenly and without warning, the arc changes. For me recently, that meant accepting a job that quickly became untenable. Though I have things to grieve, I'm returning to work that I love, with people I love, in a congregation I love. Talk about a soft landing. I'm in the process of being transformed by this change in my story. And the story is mine to tell, mine to interpret, and no one else's. Friends, as you have likely experienced too, there are so many ways in which our stories can change. Illness, death, unexpected joys like surprise births or the return of a long-lost loved one, the mixed blessing of children growing older. All of these and more have the power to transform what we imagine to be the arc of our stories. There is, of course, no avoiding these changes. It's just the way things go. But life is also shockingly persistent. And here's what I would say to all of us this morning. There is life after the tough times. We can still have a meaningful story after big losses. It will probably take hard work, but resurrection is there for the taking. The end of my basketball story wasn't exactly the end. I have to admit, it was tempting to hang our heads. We didn't want to come close. We wanted to win. I wanted to beat that big guy. But we got to choose the narrative. And I know there aren't supposed to be any moral victories in sports, but we decided there were. For weeks, we talked about how closely we played the team with college players on it, the team that went on to win the city tourney. We were clearly the second best team in the city. Nobody came as close as we did. And certainly we were better than we thought we were. I've said from this pulpit that I don't believe every cloud has a silver lining. But I do believe it's our job to create meaning from the circumstances of our lives, from our stories, whatever they are. And I think that's just what Jesus' disciples did after his death. We don't get to choose our circumstances, but we do have some choice about the meaning we'll make from them. There is life after death. There is resurrection available to us when all seems lost. May we choose to do the work of finding it. Amen.